Glittering chandeliers lit the hall as laughter rang cruel and sharp. Vanessa Cole, powerful in her sparkling evening gown, mocked the quiet mechanic at the far table. "Silence, your only talent," she sneered, drawing chuckles. Michael Grant's steady eyes didn't waver. And then it happened. The banquet doors slammed wide, masked intruders surging in, glassware exploding across marble floors, guests shoved to the ground. In a heartbeat, elegance turned to terror. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. The chandeliers of Philadelphia's Liberty Grand glimmered like ice above the banquet hall. Investors, lawyers, and CEOs traded laughter sharp enough to cut, their glasses raised in toasts to wealth. At the far end of the table sat Michael Grant, 34, auto mechanic, his plain shirt creased from a long shift. He'd only been invited because his daughter Sophie's school won a small scholarship Cole Enterprises had sponsored. He looked out of place among diamond watches and polished shoes. Vanessa Cole, queen of the night in a silver dress, noticed him. A smirk curled on her lips as she lifted her glass. "Tell me, Michael," she said loudly, "do grease-stained hands make the food taste better, or are you just here for the free meal?" The table erupted in chuckles. Michael didn't flinch. He adjusted his cuff, his eyes steady. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the quietest one at the table is the one listening the closest." The laughter faltered, but before Vanessa could retort, the doors burst open with a crash. Two masked men stormed in, metal pipes raised. Screams shattered the room, heels scraping on marble as guests dove beneath tables. One of the intruders grabbed Vanessa's wrist, yanking her necklace. Her sharp confidence drained in an instant. Michael rose. His chair scraped the floor. His hand clamped on the attacker's wrist with unexpected strength. "Let her go." The man swung, but Michael twisted, sending the pipe clattering across the hall. Gasps filled the air. In seconds, the mechanic everyone mocked was no longer invisible. The banquet had turned into a war zone of clattering silverware and frantic screams. Crystal chandeliers trembled overhead as panicked guests scrambled beneath white tablecloths. Vanessa, breathless and pale, could only stare at the man she had mocked minutes before, now standing between her and danger. The second masked intruder lunged with a knife glinting under the lights. Michael's movements weren't elegant, but they were precise, efficient, the kind learned in deserts and alleyways far from this polished hall. He sidestepped, drove his shoulder into the man's ribs, and wrenched the knife free. In one motion, he shoved the attacker face first onto the marble floor. The crowd gasped. Whispers rippled, "Who is this guy?" Even the frozen security guards hesitated to move. Michael's voice cut through the chaos, low and commanding. "Stay down." Both intruders scrambled toward the exit, cursing, stumbling over chairs as they fled into the night. Silence fell heavy in their wake. For a moment, all anyone could hear was the ragged breathing of frightened elites. And then, applause. Hesitant at first, then swelling. Executives, investors, and servers rose to their feet, clapping for the quiet mechanic who had just dismantled two armed men. Michael didn't smile. He didn't bow. He simply straightened his shirt and walked back to his chair. Every eye followed him now, not with scorn but with awe. Vanessa's throat tightened. She had called him a ghost at the table. Now, the ghost had become her shield. Reporters swarmed outside the Liberty Grand as police finally arrived. Questions flew like arrows. Who stopped the attackers? Was this planned? Cameras flashed, searching for the quiet man everyone whispered about. But Michael Grant wasn't waiting for recognition. While security herded executives into interviews, he slipped through a side door into the September night. The cool air hit him like freedom. He just wanted to get home, tuck Sophie into bed, and leave this world of marble floors and sharp laughter behind. "Michael, wait." He turned. Vanessa Cole hurried after him, her heels clicking against stone. Gone was the smirk, the mocking tone. Her face was flushed, her voice soft. You could have walked away. You could have let them take everything. Why risk yourself? Michael's tired eyes met hers. Because I've got a 10-year-old daughter. If she were in that hall, scared like you were, I'd pray someone would stand up for her. You don't need money to protect people. Just courage. His words hit harder than any weapon. Vanessa, who ruled boardrooms with a sharpened tongue, felt her composure crack. She blinked against tears she hadn't shown anyone in years. You deserve more than this, she whispered. At least let me. He cut her off with a faint shake of his head. Repay me by remembering tonight, the next time you think someone's beneath you. And with that, he walked into the darkness, leaving her staring after him, haunted. For the first time, Vanessa wondered if all her victories meant anything compared to that quiet strength. The next morning, Michael's world looked nothing like chandeliers and crystal glasses. His modest apartment smelled faintly of toast and motor oil. Sophie, bright-eyed with a gap-toothed smile, sat at their tiny kitchen table kicking her legs as she worked on a math worksheet. Dad, you're late again, she teased, spooning cereal. You'll faint at work if you skip breakfast. Michael ruffled her hair, chuckling. I'll grab something at the shop. You just focus on that math wizardry. But Sophie noticed the shadows under his eyes. She always did. After walking her to school, Michael headed to the repair shop. The clang of tools, the smell of grease, the grind of engines, this was his world. A world where hands spoke louder than words, and where respect came from honest work. He liked it that way. Across town, Vanessa Cole sat sleepless in her glass-walled penthouse. She kept seeing Michael's calm eyes in the middle of chaos. She heard his words echoing, "It doesn't take money to protect people, just courage." For a woman who measured life in contracts and stock reports, the memory unsettled her. Nobody had ever saved her without expecting something in return. And she had mocked him before he did it. By noon, Michael had grease on his palms, sweat on his shirt, and a sudden hush fell over the shop. A convoy of sleek black cars pulled up outside. Mechanics exchanged wide-eyed stares. Out stepped Vanessa Cole herself, trailed by assistants in sharp suits. Michael froze, rag in hand. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. The richest woman in Philadelphia was walking straight toward him. The repair shop went silent as Vanessa Cole crossed the oil-stained floor, her heels clicking against concrete. Mechanics froze mid-task, wrenches dangling, eyes darting between their colleague and the woman whose face dominated business magazines. "Michael," she said softly, stopping a few feet away. "We need to talk." He wiped his hands on a rag, jaw tightening. "I thought we already did." Her gaze didn't waver. "No. Last night you protected me, and I mocked you before that. I can't let it stand." "You don't owe me anything," he replied, folding his arms. "I didn't do it for you. I did it because it was right." She stepped closer, lowering her voice so the whole shop wouldn't hear. "That's exactly why I can't forget it. You showed me what real leadership looks like." Around them, whispers swirled. Is that really Vanessa Cole? She's apologizing to him? Michael gave a tired half-smile. Words are easy, Ms. Cole. Actions matter more. Her expression softened, almost pleading. Then let me show you. For a long beat, they stared at each other, a man who wanted nothing but peace, and a woman who had never been told no in her life. Finally, Michael shook his head and turned back to the car on his lift. Vanessa lingered, eyes lingering on the grease under his nails, the quiet strength in his shoulders. Something about him refused to let her walk away. And for the first time in years, she did not feel in control. That afternoon, Michael stood outside Sophie's school, leaning on the chain-link fence. The final bell rang, children pouring out in a noisy tide of backpacks and laughter. Sophie spotted him and ran over, her hair flying. "Dad," she called, wrapping her arms around his waist. Michael's tired face lit up, if only for a moment. He was about to lead her home when a familiar voice stopped him. "Michael." He turned. Vanessa Cole stood by the gate, her silver blazer gleaming in the September sun. She looked out of place among PTA moms and teachers, yet there she was, clutching a backpack nearly identical to Sophie's. Sophie's eyes widened. "Dad, who's she?" Michael cleared his throat. "This is Ms. Cole. From work." Vanessa knelt, eye level with the little girl. For once, her sharp features softened. "You must be Sophie. Your dad is very brave. He saved me the other night." Sophie's mouth dropped open. "Really? My dad?" She tugged at Michael's sleeve. "I told you you're a hero." Michael's cheeks flushed. "All right, kiddo. Don't go giving me a cape just yet." Vanessa smiled gently, then held out the new backpack. "This is for you. I noticed yours is worn. There are books and art supplies inside. I heard you like to draw." Sophie gasped, hugging it close like treasure. "Thank you, Ms. Cole." Michael stood silently, conflicted. Part of him wanted to shield Sophie from Vanessa's world. But in her eyes, he saw no cameras, no agenda, only sincerity. And it unsettled him more than any Banquet attack. Days slipped into weeks. Vanessa didn't storm into Michael's life with flashing headlines or press releases. Instead, she appeared quietly, almost invisibly. At Sophie's school, a surprise announcement came: free lunches for kids from struggling families, funded by an anonymous donor. Michael knew the handwriting on that deed. One evening, patrol cars began appearing more often around his neighborhood, where break-ins had been creeping up. A mechanic buddy whispered that someone important had pushed for extra funding. And at the school art fair, Michael found Vanessa seated in the front row, clapping louder than anyone when Sophie received a small ribbon for her painting. Sophie beamed, holding up her drawing of a lighthouse guiding ships through a storm. "Dad, look! Miss Cole's here," she exclaimed. Michael crossed his arms, uneasy. He leaned close to Vanessa after the applause died down. "Why are you really doing this?" She met his eyes, no smirk, no armor. "Because you were right. Actions matter more." He wanted to argue, to tell her she lived in a world too different from his. But then he saw Sophie tugging Vanessa's sleeve, proudly explaining every color in her picture. And for once, Vanessa wasn't the CEO commanding a boardroom. She was simply listening, patient, kind. Michael turned away, his chest tight. She was changing, or maybe he was. And either way, it felt dangerous. One late evening, as the shop lights dimmed and the city buzzed outside, Vanessa leaned against the garage door, waiting. Michael wiped his hands, suspicion etched into his face. "You don't give up, do you?" he muttered. "I have a question," she said softly. "That night at the banquet, you weren't afraid. Most people would have panicked. Even I panicked. Why didn't you?" He exhaled slowly, leaning on the workbench. "Because panic doesn't save anyone. My wife died when Sophie was 4. Since then, I swore I'd never freeze if my little girl needed me. Guess that promise carries over to anyone who's scared, not just her." Vanessa's throat tightened. She had spent years chasing power, mistaking sharpness for strength. But Michael's strength came from something quieter, heavier. She hesitated before speaking again. "There's something else. People are asking questions about you. About where you learned to fight like that." Michael's jaw clenched. His voice dropped. "I used to be Army Rangers. Discharged after I exposed corruption in the chain of command. Vanessa blinked, startled. Corruption? Contracts? Kickbacks? The kind that put soldiers in danger. He looked away. The man behind it never faced a day of justice. Ethan Ward. The name sent a chill through her. Ethan Ward, her longtime mentor, the investor who had built her career. Michael's eyes hardened. And he's still out there. Isn't he? Vanessa didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth was already in her silence. Vanessa sat rigid in her penthouse office, the city lights glimmering behind her. Ethan Ward poured himself a drink, his smile calm, practiced. To the world, he was a mentor, a kingmaker. To Vanessa, he had been the man who'd guided her rise. But now, Michael's words gnawed at her. "You're unusually quiet," Ethan said smoothly. "That incident at the banquet has everyone spooked. Exactly the kind of push we need. Fear drives mergers faster than profit ever will." Vanessa's heart skipped. "What are you saying?" Ethan swirled his glass. "Those two clowns who burst in. Staged. Controlled chaos. No one gets hurt, but people remember who kept them safe, and who offered them security afterward." Her breath caught. "You orchestrated it?" His eyes flickered, cold and unrepentant. "Business, Vanessa. You'll understand once you stop clinging to ideals." But she wasn't listening anymore. Images of Michael standing firm, protecting strangers with no agenda, flooded her mind. He had been right, Ethan's fingerprints were all over the corruption. That night, she drove to the repair shop, finding Michael locking up. She told him everything, her voice shaking. He listened silently, his expression unreadable until he finally said, "I told myself I was done fighting men like him. But if he's still pulling strings, Sophie's not safe. None of us are." For the first time since his discharge, Michael felt the old fire stir in his chest. Ethan Ward had dragged him back into a war he thought he'd left behind. 2 weeks later, the Liberty Grand glowed again with chandeliers and champagne, another investor banquet. This time, whispers followed Michael the moment he entered. He wasn't supposed to be here, just a mechanic in a plain shirt, but Vanessa had insisted he come. Ethan Ward stood at the head of the table, smiling, raising a glass. Vanessa rose too, her silver dress catching the light. But instead of echoing his toast, her voice cut sharp across the hall. "Before we celebrate, I want to address something." She turned toward Ethan. "The attack at our last banquet, it wasn't chance. It was orchestrated. By the man you trust most." Gasps rippled. Reporters leaned forward. Ethan's smirk faltered. Michael stepped into the light, holding a folder of documents Vanessa had unearthed, contracts, emails, payments tracing the staged attack back to Ethan. His calm voice carried across the room. "Some of us bleed to protect the people you exploit. Tonight, that ends." Security surged forward, but so did police, tipped off in advance. In moments, Ethan Ward was in cuffs, shouting threats that no longer carried weight. Silence followed, the same heavy silence as that first night. But this time, it was Vanessa who broke it. At the far end of the table, a timid young accountant was being mocked by an executive for his cheap suit. Vanessa's voice rang clear, "Be careful who you laugh at. Sometimes the quiet ones are the ones who save your life when chaos breaks out." The hall fell silent, then erupted in applause, not for Ethan, not for wealth, but for the truth finally spoken aloud. Michael glanced at Vanessa, who gave him a nod. Sophie's smile flashed in his mind. For once, he felt peace. He wasn't invisible anymore. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.